Let me say something that might sound uncomfortable at first. Most people don't fail because they lack discipline. They don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they are trying to build a new life from an old identity. They want new outcomes, but they keep showing up as the same old person. And that never works. Today, I want to show you why changing your identity is a real lever, and more importantly, how identity actually changes without pretending to be someone you're not. Here's what most advice gets wrong. It tells you to think positive, visualize harder, set better goals, become confident. But none of that sticks because identity doesn't change through motivation. It changes through evidence. And if you miss that, you end up stuck in the same loop for years. You say things like, I'm not a writer, I'm not technical, I'm not entrepreneur, I'm just not that kind of person. Those aren't facts, they're just conclusions. And they come from a system you are already running, whether you realize it or not. Here's the system. I call it the ESR loop. It works like this. You take action, and that action creates evidence. You interpret that evidence, and that interpretation becomes a story, and finally that story becomes your reality. Identity lives inside that loop, not at the beginning, not at the end, right in the middle. Most people think identity causes action, but in real life it's circular. Your identity shapes what actions you're willing to take. Those actions produce evidence, and then you use that evidence to reinforce who you believe you are. That's the loop. And if you don't understand it, you keep reinforcing an identity that you have outgrown. For a long time, I believed I wasn't a writer. Not because someone told me, but because the evidence was obvious to me. Like I did well in maths and science, but I did worse in reading and writing heavy subjects. So I told myself a story. I'm just not built for writing. That story quietly shaped my choices. I avoided writing, I avoided reading, I avoided anything that could challenge that identity until something changed. Not motivation, not confidence, but evidence. I started writing. Of course, firstly, it was really bad, then slightly less badly, then competently. And something strange happened. The words that I had looked up started showing up naturally. And now I write almost every single day. So the evidence changed, and so did the story. That's when I learned something critical. The evidence didn't change because my identity changed. My identity, rather, changed because the evidence changed. Here's the mistake most people make. They try to change the story without changing the evidence. They repeat affirmations, they watch motivational videos, then they try to believe harder. But the loop doesn't care what you say, it only responds to proof. If your actions keep generating the same evidence, your identity has no reason to update. That's why people feel stuck even when they are trying. They are putting effort in the wrong place. So, how does identity actually change? Not overnight and not through pretending. It is rather through small, deliberate evidence generation. You don't wake up one day and decide, I'm now a confident person. You rather collect evidence until confidence becomes the only reasonable conclusion. You don't decide that I'm an entrepreneur. You rather build things, you shape, you solve problems, you earn your first proof, and eventually your brain updates the story automatically. So identity is not declared, it is earned. Here's the reframe I want you to sit with. You're not stuck because you don't know who you are. You're stuck because you're running an outdated identity. And the solution isn't to find yourself. Rather, it is to update the system. Change the actions you take, change the evidence you generate, and change how you interpret it. The identity change follows afterwards. Always. If this resonated with you, here's a question worth answering honestly. Are you living from an identity you chose or one you inherited? Most people never stop to diagnose that. That's why I built a simple identity audit, not to tell you who to become, but to show you where you actually are in the loop. No hype, no motivation, just clarity. If you want to understand your current identity state and what kind of evidence would actually move you forward, the link is in the video description. And if not, at least remember this: you don't change your life by changing your goals. Rather, you change your life by changing the identity that produces them. Welcome to the lab.